again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past.
You frozen, Steve?
Is Steve frozen?
I think
that's
he is.
A great start.
How's everybody anyway? You all right, Mitch?
Well, I am fine.
Keith, you okay?
Doing great, mate.
Yes, from Dubai, guys.
Excellent, yeah. Just saying, Keith, how long can you imagine it? This time last year, sitting here going, we'll be watching somebody in a pub in Dubai when we haven't drank in a pub for a year.
Doesn't make sense, mate.
It doesn't, does it? It doesn't.
Steve's got a funny face. He's pulling a funny face at the top left there. I don't know what's
very serious.
He's
very
gone.
serious.
Very, very serious.
He's gone now.
So it's been. I think we'll probably end up going to be talking about Steve Bruce, aren't we? In his press conference. It's amazing, isn't it, that he can come out with some of the stuff he said. Apparently, I like very interesting comments from Craig Hope earlier. I thought they were quite amusing. I don't know whether you saw it or not, but it just goes to show that they come out with stuff. I mean, this is what happens with 9 days off, isn't it?
Well, look at Steve. The club deny all sorts of stuff that people know is true.
Yeah.
Take the ASM thing, for example, his little trip back home for his birthday. And they've said officially it was club sanctioned.
Yeah.
And so many people know it wasn't.
Yeah.
And there's enough evidence out there you don't have to look hard to find why. And that's not a dig at the ASM either.
No.
It's the club's the problem. And there's just no leadership there at all, top to bottom.
Yeah.
It's all over the place.
Rudderless ship, isn't it? At times, rudderless ship. But it's when they get in front of the TV camera and he holds a press conference in the manner that he did today, and comes out with some of the sort of, I suppose you could call it the usual rhetoric, couldn't you? Because it's the cliches, it's the football cliches that even he's probably been on a training course to understand. If I'm perfectly honest, you know.
God, sorry, lad, the internet went off.
Pay your bills, son.
I'm now actually linked up.
That was 3 minutes we've covered for you.
I'm actually linked up on my phone now. The internet's just crashed completely, so good old Virgin strike again. But Steve, you continue, mate. I'll just sit here.
Hey, well, just saying, Steve, press conferences are a great thing, aren't they? And poor Craig Hope, he must have been sitting there screaming his head off at what came out today at the press conference, with, people can have an opinion, which was what we were talking about before you rudely interrupted her, actually.
Sorry, mate.
Anyway, I'll hand back over to you,
Thanks for covering, Steve. I knew you wouldn't let us down. Yes. Sorry about that, folks. Good evening. Well, NUFC matters. I'm sure Steve's already said it. But I mean, the Steve Bruce scenario is going to dominate tonight's talk, I think, Steve, because as you say, the press conference today was pretty good, and I did have this saved up actually. So continue with the press conference stuff, Steve, and finish up on it, because I thought this was an absolute belter. I did send it to Toon Pools on Twitter, actually. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I can't take any notice of polls. I just have to focus on Spurs. And of course, that's in response to the Chronicle's overwhelming survey, which basically said that everybody wants Steve Bruce out of the club.
Exactly. What an insult to Toon Pools. Poor lad, he works his socks off putting polls together for Newcastle fans, and then he gets that thrown back at him at a press conference. Absolutely shocking. The Chronicle have got a lot to answer for, mate, because he would have probably gone under the radar with these polls if it hadn't been for the Chronicle interfering. He's probably going to be the first to come onto Twitter and say, quite right. At least I hope he does anyway.
Brilliant stuff. Joe Walker says it's the best 3 minutes in NUFC Matters history with me not being on. Thanks, Joe. Go on, mate. Go on, Mitch.
No, you've got a poll of 14,000 people that says 95% want him out. And he says he can't take notice of polls. Come on. Pull the other one. It's got bells on. And this is where he's getting a free rein. We've spoken about this ad infinitum. We've had what nobody in the ground, so he's got away with that. Zoom controlled press conferences, so he's got away with that. They've banned a journalist who wrote 2 stories that the club verified and said were true, and they've banned him anyway. It's bullshit. At the end of the day, and as a PR exercise, I'm beginning to wonder how much else our club can get wrong. Steve froze again.
I think you might have. Keith, do you think they can get anything else wrong? I mean, it's been 13 years of getting stuff wrong, though, hasn't it? I mean, if we're perfectly honest.
I mean, I've got to be careful what I say, but I think that I just don't know what he thinks about when he starts the press. If I was voted 95% down on a press release, and somebody insisted I talked about it, I wouldn't knock the figures because the people he's talking to is the 95%.
Yeah.
So what I would do is come up with some plausible reason why you can't be popular when a club's, playing fourth off bottom. But what he's doing at the minute is he seems to just defy, what he criticised fans months ago and made it all as though it was a blip. But now it's there. I mean, what I don't understand is why he doesn't get together with Graham Jones, put his arm around him, and make that bit united, because that's in his control. Him and Graham Jones could say we both won now, but the story I get is that Jones is being pushed out. I don't understand what was the point of bringing him in. He made a difference when he came in.
Are you hearing similar, Mitch? Are you hearing similar to that? That Jones has now been kind of sidelined and pushed to one side.
I've been told he's got to report through Agnew and others to get a message to Bruce. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it looks that way.
Keith, that marries other things we've heard this week. Steve and I have shared a lot of information, and we've had information given from 2 separate sources that says the dressing room is irrevocably split.
Lost, yeah, completely lost.
Absolutely split, even down to Lascelles threatening to resign the captaincy to concentrate on his game, and then the players rallying around saying, well, he's going to make Shelvey captain and we don't want that.
Yes.
I mean, on that, if you were to get straight to that, I just think when he names Shelvey in that team, he dictates the pace of the game. Somebody said to me the other day on Twitter that they need to put young legs around Shelvey. Why? Why don't you just take him out? Because he hasn't got the legs. I remember when Beatty's legs went, and it was sad watching him without that pace that he always had. But it happens to every player. Every player gets to a certain age and the legs start to go, and Shelvey's legs have gone. And I don't think Hendricks was ever there. I don't think he ever had legs. But I can't imagine why we'll be worse off going into Tottenham with Longstaffs and giving Murphy a run as well, because they're young, they're keen, they're hungry, and they've got all to prove. But for me, this thing about I want experience. So what's experience in the last 20 games? We've had 2 wins in 20. So at what point do you say experience isn't working? Or I'd substitute the word experience for slow legs.
Yeah.
Do
you think it's fair to say it doesn't just dictate the pace, but it dictates the attitude on the pitch?
Yeah.
Because his attitude certainly seems to rub off on people in a negative way. I mean that watching the games over the last few weeks, and then obviously the one that stands out entirely is the Brighton game, where everybody just seemed to be so deflated and basically beaten before they got on the pitch. I mean, that in itself. I mean, as professionals, it makes you sit back and wonder what on earth has been going on. I mean, I know it's a long journey to Brighton, and they're going to sit there on the coach or in a plane and then a coach and chat among themselves. But to have then come out and put a performance in a display of that which was completely negative from the moment they walk on the pitch, look like broken men. I don't know whether you two guys were of the same opinion, but it certainly appeared to me as though they were broken before they even...
The whole team looked that way.
On the pitch.
The whole team did. But if I ask you two, if you're going to play Tottenham at the weekend, what's the one thing we need to do? What's the one thing that team needs?
We need
energy.
But needs to change. It needs to, that team that came off the Brighton pitch, which you just described there eloquently, Steve, was a broken team. And they weren't together, they didn't play for each other, and they were playing as individuals. You've got to go into Tottenham with something different. You've got to go in with change. And when I'm talking about change, I'm talking about you've got to rip something out of that team. You can't change one player. You play one player, it'll be the same. So for me, you've got to rip the thing to bits. And, you know, when I see midfields, I see Matty and Sean Longstaff, and I see Willock and young Murphy, all with legs. Fraser looks as though he's had a good trip in Scotland. If he comes on, give him a try. Fraser looks as though he doesn't want to be at Newcastle. Yeah. I got told from a good source that he didn't want to come, which surprised us. He said he didn't want to come to the club, but he does look.
Keith, I heard not just the same. I heard that he's done nothing but whinge and moan since he arrived.
But do you hear he didn't want to come?
I heard that he was hesitant to sign.
Yeah. And it shows. It shows in the play.
But I've heard that he's done nothing but moan and moan and moan.
Yeah.
Since he's arrived about anything and everything. And I think what you're touching on about making change, one of the things that again has further divided the dressing room is the fact that Bruce is looking totally away from the Longstaffs and Elliot Anderson. That some of the experienced pros are seeing what these guys are doing in training and saying, hey, these need to be around the first team now.
Yeah.
And Bruce just isn't interested.
And the well-run story from the training ground is that Sean Longstaff's been the best player in training for about 6 weeks. Yeah. So he's been head and shoulders above everybody, and he's doing every single thing he can. But he's been ignored. The rumours now, Anderson's getting ignored a little bit as well off the manager. Yeah. I just don't get it. I honestly don't get it. When my neck's on the line, I want every bullet I can muster to put in my gun to give me the best chance of doing well, and I just don't see it.
Yeah, so I think what we've also got to look at is the tactics. You know, I mean, it's all well and good making a change, but those changes have also got to bring about a change in formation. They've got to change it. Obviously, we're looking for a change of attitude, a change of formation, and a change in tactics. We can't just throw personnel in and still expect them to be able to play alongside with an exact the same formation, for example, with false nines, false tens, false fours, false sixes, you name it, which just seems to be something that he seems to be throwing out willy-nilly. So I agree entirely that the midfield needs legs, it needs attitude, it needs people with who are willing to put the effort in. But we also need that from strikers who can actually play up front. It's no point in having people who are strikers who are going to play wide and barely get a look in the game like we've had with Gale. We need, I mean, it was only a couple of days ago that it looked as though Wilson was going to be fit for this game, and now we're here in the press conference whether it's Bruce playing bluff or not, that perhaps he might barely make the bench. And yet it's ASM that he thinks could be the man who slots in. Now, again, we've got 2 hours. We couldn't be here for the whole 2 hours just talking about what he should be doing with the formation as well, lad.
I've been told this week from a good source that, and I was really surprised because I thought Wilson was ready, and I thought St. Maximin was well aware. And this week I was shocked to hear that St. Maximin could be ready, and Wilson might not be ready. That really surprised me. A
lot of mind games going on from Steve Bruce. Yeah, I mean, you know, he's used. It's one thing I'll praise him for in the sense that when players have seemed as if they're not coming back, suddenly they appear on the team sheet. It's just unfortunately plays them in the wrong position. So just got to hope that he's not rushing ASM and Wilson back. That is the problem. Joe Walker says the same. Rushing ASM and Wilson back is suicide. Of course, the big story today wasn't the press conference for a change, where usually we're all putting our hands over our ears or trying to find something less boring to do instead. It was this story that Luke Edwards broke, which was that Mike Ashley is preparing to offer Steve Bruce a new contract. Surely that's clickbait, Mitch, of the highest order.
Well, didn't he write that there was crisis meetings after the Brighton game, and they've come out today and denied that totally? So you can't believe it, mate. I just think when he was going on about looking for a mole in the dressing room, the person that seems to speak to certain people in the press most of the time is the manager himself, and it's a PR exercise. And is this a reaction to the fact that he wasn't involved at all in sorting out Gale's new contract? It just feels convenient to talk about contract renewals when Gale's just renewed his contract and the manager had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
What did you make of it, Steve? I mean, it's, April Fool's Day yesterday, not today, but it certainly caused a big stir amongst our supporters.
And I think April Fool's Day started in January at Newcastle, didn't it? Because judging by some of the performances and some of the words that have come out of the club and the way that the club's been running since Christmas, it's just been one long April Fool. And as Mitch says, when you hear the stories that are coming out, when you hear of the split, the divides, the whole. I mean, right? Everything just seems to be piling on, doesn't it? The injury to Hayden, to add to the injury woes, the thought the players not coming back, etc., etc. And it's just typical of Newcastle United, isn't it? Once we get into a mess, we find it almost impossible to dig ourselves out of it.
We do, yes. I mean, what do you think, Keith? It's one of those. One of those stories which, of course, people now take with a pinch of salt. It doesn't have to be Luke. It can be any journalist who can come up with that kind of, explosive headline. But, surely, even if we do drop into the Championship, he can't be planning life with Steve Bruce, can he?
I think. Reporters have got to put stories out. And if they don't put stories out, they don't earn. So I think you've got to respect a reporter putting a story out, but then you've got to look at the purpose, what is intended to do. I don't think. I still believe we'll stay up, and if we stay up, I believe the takeover will go through. Thereafter, and I don't believe that anybody sat down with Steve Bruce and said we're thinking about a contract next year. I think it's total fabrication. His contract's got another year to run. Why would somebody be talking about a new contract with a guy who won 2 and 20 games? Even if Ashley was remaining, even if the club was going into the Championship. So I seriously, I think we're being played, but I think it's quite obvious, and I think it's quite deliberate. And when I read it, I got told it and just burst out laughing. And the people who own the club aren't stupid. They haven't made billions by doing things in a crazy manner. And if there was fans in the ground now, I don't think he'd be there. I think the manager would be gone. So I think the only reason he's there is because there's no fans in. So come on. We were 10,000 down on season tickets this year. They had to give them away. Do you honestly think they're going to chance that next year? Give him another contract with a 95% poll being played. It's just another kick in the bollocks for the fans. It's just another bit of insult. But I don't take it serious. I don't take it serious.
Last time we had you on, obviously we've had a few we've had a few questions over the last couple of weeks on the show, in the chat. People just saying last time Keith was on, nothing derogatory, I have to say, which has been great, and the people in our chat are always great and always ask sensible questions. They're all just really wanting to know, Keith, last time you were on, you were saying about March as potentially a big month. We're into April now, albeit only the first 2 days. What's your gut feeling? Because we know that arbitration, there was it dragged on essentially because the chair had to be agreed by both parties. What are you feeling and what are you hearing about that at the moment? And what's your gut feeling now?
I think February was expected to be a big month of negotiation, but I think between end of February and into March, they did that move to remove the chair, which is a big move, and it was a legal case, and it would have cost them a lot of money to do that. I think in doing it, I think they'll have got a result, because that chair comes out in the same chambers as Shai Fatima and the same chambers as Nick DeMarco. So they'll have pegged that chair, and there's one thing I think is more guaranteed now is when the case runs through arbitration, you're not going to see a biased chair because they've tried to get him off. So I think in doing that, I think it's been a good move to peg the chair and to register that chair's got previous with the EPL. So I don't think it was a bad move. The question's still being asked, are they going to appeal? My understanding is they probably won't. And people ask us every day when the arbitration stopped. The arbitration hasn't stopped since they appealed against the chair. The process has started, it's ongoing now. But what the club can't do and what the EPL can't do is notify fans. People ask every day in public briefs what's happening. And if you were to say this, that, and the other's happened with the arbitration, whoever's like that's going to be in trouble. I mean, that's a High Court ruling. So we just got to sit back as fans and accept that the process is in way. I don't think for a minute the EPL are going to rush that arbitration prior to knowing our fate in the relegation battle. And it doesn't change everything because they started the process. They've got to keep going with it. Somebody said yesterday, their logic said if we go into the EFL will then get the problem. Well, they won't because it started with the EPL have got to finish this case off. And this case is a challenge against how they run the EPL's ODT. It's how they did the directors test. So they can't just scrap that case. There's been millions spent to tackle it. So that will continue on regardless of which league they're in. But in terms of people saying, well, the only logic I can understand is Ashley's trying to get us down because the EFL test is simpler. It's nearly identical. The two tests are very, very similar. So there's no conspiracy, because that's been doing the rounds for a long time. There's no conspiracy that they want to go down. I'm as frustrated as the next fan that we're challenging with 9 games to go with a man called Steve Bruce. Steve Wraith, you said earlier, that he plays mind games. I think the games that worry about me is that he sets a team out and they don't know what to do. I think each player doesn't know what role he plays, and they showed that. I think it was against Wolves. The equaliser came in, and Murphy, they were trying to get a message to them through Richie. Come on, you're talking about nobody in the ground. Are you talking about 3 coaches couldn't run down the touchline or send somebody out to get wound up and scream some instructions to somebody? So that's the bit that worries me more about the manager. In terms of takeover, everything's just the same. I'm fortunate in that I probably have a greater understanding of the monies that's been spent. And if there was nothing happening and there was no takeover and no potential buyer waiting, you wouldn't spend that kind of money. The money being spent is phenomenal, and it's there's 3 barristers retained on that side, on the arbitration side, and they'll be between £1,000 and £1,500 an hour, and you wouldn't spend that if you weren't intending to get a result.
Keith, to give people some perspective on the kind of figures we're talking, right? Bin Zayed Groups was outed during the Derby takeover attempt about having not paid the legal bill for what they did to try and buy Newcastle United. That was about a couple of quid short of £500,000.
Yeah,
that was the bill. I don't think I'm overstepping the line now by saying that's the figure that we're talking.
Yeah.
And hopefully I won't get deported because I quite like this pub and me pint. But but that's the figure just to do the legal work to get to the owners and directors test. It was £500,000.
Yeah.
That's not to then conclude it and not to take it further. So the sums you're talking about now, you can add a note on the end of that.
Yeah.
And they're not small amounts.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your take on it, Steve?
We all know how long this.
Mine is exactly the same. I mean, when you keep a watching brief on what's going on, and you're doing it at arm's length, obviously you're just a supporter, and you're looking and you're absorbing everything that goes on, and you know how legal situations work. You know how the whispers that have come out. You hear, you see court cases, and information that passes your way. But on this particular one, I mean, I think he's absolutely nailed it on the head that, the process is ongoing, the process will continue, but everybody's locked down in silence. Everyone's locked down by the fact that it's the High Court and you can't say a word. And that's why we're not hearing anything. And as frustrating as it may be for fans, it's probably the best thing that could happen. You would hope then that it would give us the opportunity to focus on what's happening on the pitch. Sadly, the players and more importantly, the coach don't seem to be able to focus on what's happening on the pitch. That's where my 100% focus is, and it's 100% directed at them to shake them out of this situation that we've got in, because at the end of the day, I don't want us to be relegated. I don't want us to be playing in the EFL, in the Championship. I don't want to go back to that. I want what's best for Newcastle United, and I think what's best for the profile of Newcastle United is to be in the Premier League. And so that's it in a nutshell from my perspective.
Yeah, okay. Keith, we're getting a bit of feedback from you. I just had to mute you there, mate. I'm not sure whether you've got your headphones on or something. Yeah, we've just got a little bit. I can hear, I don't know what it is, but we can hear something coming back from yours. I don't think it's affecting the viewers because they haven't complained. It's just me and Mitch could hear it coming from somewhere. So don't panic. All I'm saying is when you go on and off, will you just unmute yourself for us, and then then that'll control it. I just want to ask you about this. I mean, obviously, he's been a major player in this. Although we haven't heard anything from him directly, we're hearing a lot from him indirectly with photographs. And again, this is Nick DeMarco passing a subliminal message. Keith, do you think?
It's not a. I mean, it's like anything. He's a bright lad, and he's not gonna. He could have put one of 60 glasses of beer on there, and he's put that on. If you notice in his message, he mentions Newcastle before his own team. He's a QPR fan, so he puts Newcastle first. So, in reality, he's telling you he's on with the case. That's what he's on with, and that's where his focus is at the minute. He wants to win the Newcastle case. I mean, Mitch was talking about costs before. If you had, forget all the lawyers, because there'll be a lot of lawyers working on this, but just on the side that's working on the arbitration, it's been quoted in the press, they've got 3 barristers working, and 2 of them are Shahid and Nick DeMarco. Their rates will be circa £1,200 to £1,500 an hour, and that would make a monthly bill for 3 barristers at £750,000. So if you had a £750,000 a month bill, this has been going on for about 8 or 9 months. So you work that out, and you're spending a lot of millions. I'm not saying they work on this every minute of every day, but that gives you the sort of figures that you're talking about. A top barrister is £12,000 a day. 8 hours at £1,500. So when Nick DeMarco goes on there, it's like anything. People ask us this all the time. He's not a wind-up merchant. He's not going to put something on there to take the pay out of us. He's putting something on there, I guess, to give a bit of encouragement. But do you think Nick DeMarco takes on duff cases? Do you think he takes on cases he can't win? Do you think Nick DeMarco thinks, I'll have a go at that Newcastle one because I'll never get that through? All QCs take on a case they fancy, and the best ones get offered more cases than they physically handle. And him and Shahid have took this on because they think they can win it. And I've got no doubt, if Newcastle stay up, that they will win the case.
Graham Coleman says, what if DeMarco drinks too much brown ale? Will he remember what's going on? Go on, Mitch.
It's like what my granddad used to tell me. Good jockeys don't ride donkeys.
That's right. No, it's so true, isn't it? Pat Edry and Willie Carson and Lester Ping in the day, they won so many races because they had the best horses in every race. And DeMarco's record's impeccable. So I don't think he's going to say, this is an enormous high-profile case. I'll take it on because you should get a good kicking. And I think, I'm told, this is what I'm told, is that when it goes to the end of it all, it's not about piracy. It's not about human rights. I'm told it's about separation. And that's the information I have. It's all down to separation. Have you heard the same?
Yeah.
Have you heard, yeah. So talk about separation. At the first time round, I'm reliably informed that the EPL didn't tackle separation, didn't take any legal advice from Saudi, and that the Saudi team felt that they could easily overcome it and prove it. So this time round, because it's an appeal, they'll have to deal with it, and they'll have to do it properly, and the bench will decide who's got the better evidence. I don't think they'll get a better expert witness than, QC than Shahid, and I don't think they'll have the ability to overturn what's come to them. So I think they will win on that. And I'm told, again, like you are, that it's all about separation. It's all about separating the two. So I feel confident they'll win this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. B. Taylor asks, sorry, Mitch, he just says, in your opinion, Keith, do you think the Consortium will still want to buy from us if we go down? Seems pointless if Mike Ashley spending all this money if Ashley wasn't prepared to sell under any circumstances.
It's a great question. It's asked, daily and sometimes numerous times a day, and it is a really good question. I think the answer, and I think you three lads know the answer to the first part, it's a categorical yes. That's true, that the Consortium still want to buy us. So I think they've described it would be a pain in the arse, is how they've described it if we go down, but it wouldn't sicken their appetite. The problem you've got, right, because you might say, well, let's just go down, get bought, let's get back up. The problem you've got is quite simple. When I've spoken to people, the contacts I've got, there's an estimate being put on that the club's value will drop from, let's just put a number out there, 340 to, I know you've quoted on the show many times, 100 million, it'll go to 240. I'm told it's worse than that. It'll go to 190. That's probably where the valuation will. So you're going from, the estimate is that it drops 150 million. So think about that and remember that Mike Ashley's had 2 attempts to get back up and got up both times first attempt. You've got to ask yourself, unless some fancy deal was worked out, which I can assure you hasn't been worked out yet, everybody says there must be a deal already done now for them just to be so laid back. There is no deal. You lads know there's no deal. The last time a deal was done was last Easter, was when the club was going to be bought. And it was done based on it being a Premier League club. And there is no deal in place for it being a Championship club. That could come later. If it goes down to be a Championship club, and if the valuations come out right at 190 million, you've got to ask yourself a question. If you were Mike Ashley and you got up first time at the first attempt twice, would you take 150 million hit, or would you let Almiron, St Maxim, Dubravka go for starters, and that's going to get anybody 50 million, and put 25 million back into players with the squad you've got, and then get back out again like you did the other 2 times? Because a 25 million hit's more realistic than 150 million hit. The only way I see it happening, if we go down with the Consortium, is that an agreement's made that, for example, the TV money went to Ashley. So if the TV money went to Ashley and he had hold of say the pot of 190, he got the TV money, and then he got a bonus if they got back up first attempt. But that's a lot of ifs and whats and wherefores. And, it's not for us to do that deal. But what I'm reliably informed is that deal hasn't been done as yet. And why would you? Why would you price a club up cheaper if it was going to go down when it hasn't gone down yet?
It's also a convoluted deal, and Ashley doesn't like convoluted deals.
Yes. No.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, those questions will always be there, and until we know, what's going on with arbitration, I suppose that'll be the next milepost, if you like, Steve. Once we know what's happened there, we'll maybe know a little bit more. But again, I think we're all more concerned about the football on the pitch at the minute, and which division we're going to be in.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where as supporters, that's where our focus should be, and certainly where my focus is. And I know that many of my pals, their attitude is we've put all thoughts of takeover to one side. We're concentrating on the team. We're concentrating on the club. We're concentrating on the games that we've got coming, and seeing where that's going to take us, and basically directing our ranks in that direction, if the truth be known, rather than directing our ranks to the court case that we don't know anything about, and we don't know how it's performing, and have no right to know how it's performing either. So everything's focused on the football, where it should be as supporters.
Yeah, it is, and that's what should be happening. Keith, what was that about Mia Dad's? Did he like one of your tweets last night, Keith?
Yeah, it was a strange night last night because, everybody's still there. Everybody's still waiting and fighting to do their bit. And last night we had Nick DeMarco posed with a glass of brown ale. We had Murdad came on and went back to one of my tweets, probably from when we first come out fighting. Went back months. So everybody was intrigued as to where he'd gone through our timeline and pulled an old tweet off and liked it. And people were heartened by that because they thought, well, it just shows whose tweet he was on last night and what he was thinking. So I think what he was doing, he was sending a message to say that they're still there. If it wasn't, he'd have closed his account down or he'd have stopped following us. and he'd have done something different. But he did that last night, and then Jamie Rubin did the same as well. So it let the fans know that the people are still there, ready and waiting. And answers a question we got earlier on is, are the Consortium still willing to buy the club? Of course they are. It's just they prefer to buy a Premier League club, and the risk is, if it's Championship, how much would Ash be prepared to drop it to?
Yeah, that's the big question, of course, Mitch, isn't it? You're nodding your head there. It's unknown. It's a question nobody knows the answer to, because Ashley's made it clear he wants to sell the club, but we just don't know. We don't know whether he'll want to sell it, and what kind of deals he's going to cut if we drop.
Time and time again, we talk about Ashley being a willing seller or not, and he's not. He's just a difficult seller. We've said this over and over again. He's never shown a sign that he's prepared to take a cut in any way, shape or form. Steve and I spoke about one of the Canadian dealers a few years ago, which, if you add the numbers up, they weren't that different to what they're talking about now.
Yeah.
And so he's never shown a sign to me that he's prepared to take a bit of a loss. I think the other random factor is the COVID effect on football, and we touched on this last week about where's the money going to go next season and what's the Championship going to be like next season. And some of these players who want away might not find they're able to get the deals that they want elsewhere. And so in terms of selling players and then reinvesting into the squad, that might actually be irrelevant in many ways, because we might not actually be able to do it, no matter how hard their agents try to get them away. I think we're heading into the great unknown in many ways if we get relegated, in terms of what the valuation of the club is, because Keith's absolutely right. The COVID effect plus relegation could take a massive hit on the value of the club. Massive. Not a small amount, massive amount. The gulf is huge. As a Championship club these days, we're not talking about, I spoke about the Leicester game that kept us up on the retro show through the week. The gap from the second to the first division then wasn't the gap that's from the Championship to the Premiership now. Not in class, and certainly not in terms of value and money. How did we get Kevin Keegan to sign for us as a player when we're in the second division? Because we had as much financial clout as some of the teams in the first division. That doesn't happen now, and it's light years apart, not even a small amount, So there's so many things that we don't know and we can't factor in, probably until we arrive at that point. Now, we hope we don't have to arrive at that point. I hope that we stay up. But I'm using the word hope. I'm not confident. I'm not confident from what I see on the pitch. I'm not confident from what I hear in the background in the dressing room. That scares the life out of me, to be honest with you, because, like we said last week, if that game against Brighton was a boxing match, the referee would have stopped it at half time. We weren't defending ourselves and we didn't lay a glove on them. And we need more than that. We need something different to that. And I've got a feeling that we've got a manager at the minute that is blinkered and will only see what he wants to see. He's playing formations that don't make sense. He's playing players out of position. We've got Fraser, who scored 2 goals through the week for Scotland, playing as a winger, funnily enough, because guess what? He's a winger. He's not a split striker and he's not a false 9. He's a winger. He's a winger, Steve. You knacker. He's a winger. So why not try him as a winger? Why not try a couple of wingers? Put Murphy on the other wing. Try a couple of wingers. You're supposed to be an old school lad. You say it's about players and not formations. Why not go 4-4-2? Play 2 wingers and a couple of strikers in the box. Yeah, lump it in. You might as well, because we're going to die playing stupid formations with diamonds and split strikers and false 9s, false 10s, left back, right backs, half back, centre halves, or whatever you want to call it. Because haven't got a clue. It doesn't look like you've got a clue what you're doing. So, we might as well try and put square pegs in square holes and give it a damn good go. And I just worry we're not going to see that. And then the whole knock-on effect for takeovers, valuations, and what the squad's going to be like next season, we're genuinely heading into the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. Big shout out to our sponsors. We've got over 600 watching again. Friday nights, honestly, really appreciate your support. Spider VPN, who've been with us the last couple of months and are staying with us again into April. Big shout out to them. Give them a show for your internet security. I'm definitely going to have to get the lads around. Like this, bloody, it's getting on my wick. Geordie Riffs, premium guitar lessons for beginners and children. Guitar repairs and service and recording studio. Get to their website, www.geordieriffs.co.uk. Facebook, Geordie Riffs Official. Instagram at Geordie Riffs, and also a big shout out to John at qtechshop.co.uk. He's been busy today making loads of little videos. He's very good at that, as well as making pool tables, snooker tables and other very exciting things. Get on our website, well worth a look. And big shout out to John from Jab Signature, the makers of all of our flyers and posters. And if you're a first time visitor to the channel, please subscribe. You just need to hit that little Newcastle Legends badge in the bottom right hand corner. And that's it. You're subscribed. It is free to do it. We've had 800 more people subscribe this week, which is great. Please hit the like button, hit the little thumb up, and click the share button, which is that little arrow, and that shares us to all the social media. It is match weekend, of course. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk match day bucket is in operation, so you can make your donation just as if you were walking up to the cathedral on the hill, just by visiting that website and depositing whatever you want to deposit into there. And as always, we will be supporting that and pushing that on Match Day Live. I do have a show tomorrow, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I will be bringing Mick Lowe's on. Mick wants to have a chat about the forthcoming match, of course, this weekend, and look ahead to the remaining fixtures, and also taking your questions. Always good to have Mick Lowe's on. And of course, we'll be doing Match Day Live on Sunday from 1:30. I'm also appearing on Al Waleed's show. It's a while since I've been on there. Realistic Wraith versus Positive Penman. 9 rounds to go. There we go. You can tell Stu Penman had a part to play in that. He's definitely bulked himself up. He picked the bigger body, hasn't he? He's made me look like some kind of featherweight. But Steve Bruce refereeing in the middle. But look, joking aside, looking forward to that. That's 5 o'clock tomorrow night for an hour. With Al Waleed, we'll be talking all things Newcastle United and looking at the next 9 games. So looking forward to that. Great to be asked. Don't worry, later on we will be doing Troll of the Week. We'll also be looking at lookalikes, and we'll also be looking at Twitter of the Week, and we'll have your final clue to win those 4 tickets for the pantomime, courtesy of QTech, and looking forward to that. And also we have our very own Toon Stato, Andre, who's pinged his video to us today to look ahead to the Tottenham game and give us a few stats, and he says this is one of his favourites, so be interesting to see what he's got to say about that. The Mackems won again today, Mitch. Did you see that?
No, because I don't pay any attention to what they do at all. The only bit of attention I pay to them is trying to work out what's going on with this takeover of theirs. I had a very, very interesting conversation with somebody last week who turns out is the ex-boyfriend of a former senior individual at Sunderland, and some of the stuff he came out with was very interesting indeed. Look, like I say, I don't really pay any attention to them. They're not my problem. I've got red and white mates, and I've said this on here before. I've got red and white mates, and I'm quite happy if they're happy. But to be honest with you, the only time I'm even bothered by them is when we play them, and hopefully we're not playing them next season. Because I'm quite sure. Look, they made a really good appointment managerially. They made a change at a good time and brought probably the right person in to get them dragged up through that division. And that's great. Let's just reaffirm it's a division we've never been in, and I hope we never are in.
Okay, David Reeves got a question in for you anyway, Mitch. He says, does Mitch have any positivity, and what's his opinion? Stay up or go down? And he wants the same thoughts from everybody else on the panel. So Mitch, we'll go with you because you've got the mic. So does Mitch have any positivity, and are we going to stay up or are we going to go down?
Positivity about what? I'm concerned about our position at the moment from what I'm hearing coming out of the club from very good sources and Steve can go hunting for moles as much as he likes. There's a lot more than one individual leaking stuff from inside the dressing room and inside the club, and they're all saying pretty much the same things. That has actually chipped away at positivity about staying up. Positivity in terms of takeover, I know fine well the Consortium still want the club come hell or high water. And even the noises here in the Middle East are the same. Under the radar a little bit, but still the same. So in that terms of positivity, yes, I've got positivity for that. I just really genuinely worry about keeping Bruce in that dressing room is keeping a division in the dressing room that right now we don't need.
What's your take on that, Steve?
I'm the glass half full man, remember, who 2 weeks ago on the show thought that we would go out and put performances against Brighton, and how wrong I was. And yet, even then, the glass still remains half full, because until there is not a fathom of a chance of staying up, then I'm one of these people who is like, you fight and you fight and you fight. And that's what I expect from the players, and that's what I expect from the coaching staff, and that's what I expect from the owners, and that's what I expect from the directors, that everybody's pulling together to get the results that we need to keep the team up. And as I say, until it reaches the point where it's impossible to stay up, my glass will remain half full. Whether I'm deluded or what, and some people may think I am, but it's just, that's the way that I am. That's, when you play football, you go out there to win. When you watch football, you go there hoping and praying, but also in some instances demanding that your team put the performance in and comes away with the 3 points. And that's the way I am with this. And I understand that we're gradually running out of games, but I'm looking at that league and I'm thinking, we're 2 points above Fulham. We've got a game in hand against Fulham. The destiny is in our own hands. We go out there and we put performances in that I think a bunch of professionals should be able to do. I think collectively we should have, and probably have got, a better squad. And we've got better individuals in that squad than Fulham have. It's just a case of whether or not that team can be galvanised to get those results. I know that there are plenty of people out there who could galvanise that team. And while there's that chance, then I'm still very much in that glass half full mentality and that mindset. And I expect the players and the coaching staff and the rest of the people around the club to be in exactly the same. Having said that, I wandered around St James's Park on, I think it was Wednesday. I think I sent you a couple of photographs, Steve and Mitch. I'm not sure that I sent them to you as well, Keith.
Yeah.
But that ground at the moment looks like it's been fenced off and is ready for demolition. It was embarrassing. It was bad enough when you did a little video shoot, Steve, back in, I think it was beginning of May, at the start of lockdown, when you wandered around and you showed us and people were saying what a mess it is. Whatever you do, if you've got any love for Newcastle United, don't go up there at the moment, because honestly, you'll walk back down that hill, down Barrett Road, in almost tears at the state that ground is in. When you see a place like that fenced off, the first thing you're thinking is that Thompsons of Prudhoe are on their way in with the wrecking ball. That's what it looks like. That's the impression that it gives you. The dirtiness, the scruffiness, the abandonment, the moss that's growing on the pillars, the fencing that's stopping you even from getting near the turnstiles, the grass and the weeds that are everywhere. It was soul destroying, Steve. It was probably. I mean, I walked down the quayside. I walked from there on into town down onto the quayside. And I think if me memory, I think I was in a daze. I got all the way down to the bottom of Grey Street, and I was like, how did I get here? I'm still thinking about the state of that ground. You know, that's what it was like. It was soul destroying. It was anguish. It was like a stab to your heart. You know. But in terms of where the team is and where I want the club to be, I want us to remain, as I said earlier, in the Premier League, and the destiny's in our own hands. And as long as the players are of that mindset, and the manager can get them into that mindset, or maybe it's the players get the manager into that mindset that they can do it, then I think we've got every possibility that we can stay up.
Yeah, okay. What's your take on that, Keith? You've heard what Mitch and Steve have had to say. It's great to hear a Steve hasty rant. People always go mad on a Friday night for one of them. They've had one. They've also noticed he's not wearing his glasses. So there you go. Oh, they're there. Go on, Keith.
I think if it was down to me and I was in charge and I could get rid of one person out the dressing room, it would be Bruce. Because I think taking him out the dressing room would give an uplift to a lot of people. I think he's got such a negative impact. If I could take 3 players that's capable of getting on the team sheet and send them home or send them on holiday, it would be Kraft, Hendrick and Shelby, because I just don't think they offer us anything. I think when they're named, something happens, and I think we just become a team that's closed down, and I don't think we've got any legs. I don't think we attack, and I think we sit 30 yards off. Lee Clark once said on one of your shows, he said the gap between the defence and the attack is too big. That gap is not made up by midfield players. So for me, I'm downbeat when I see the team picked and Shelby's on it and Bruce has stood there. I'm downbeat when Graham Jones has got to stand back and he's trying to work and talk to players. For me, I would say if we keep Bruce, he's got to work with Jones, and Jones has got to be vociferous at the side of the pitch. We've got to start something different. 2-20, we need to start something different. So for me, from now to Tottenham, I'm optimistic. I think we can do something. But if Tottenham's exactly the same as Brighton, if there's no running, no chasing, no hassling, and we just look like people who don't want to be there, then massive changes are needed. I mean, even if we get beat 2-1 of Tottenham, but we work our bollocks off, at least we're given something back, because we never looked close to getting in that game against Brighton, apart from Fraser hitting the post. We just didn't look as though we felt as though we had the right to be on the pitch. We looked as though we were visitors passing through, as though, I don't know, we're under 12s team playing against the seniors, and you've got to get rid of the ball quick. So for me, I think we'll stay up, but I would like to see some fight tomorrow. I'd love to see a team sheet without Shelby and Hendrick on it. I'd love to see Matty and Sean and Murphy, getting a look in there with Willock, because I think the midfield would run at you and would tackle and would chase and would harry. And if we do that and just look like we bothered against Tottenham, I think the games that's coming up against Burnley, Sheffield United and West Ham are all winnable. And yesterday I talked to Liam Kennedy and I said, how many points do you think we need? He said 8. That was the number. He says it'll be 8, but it'll be tight as. And I spoke to contacts at the club and they said 10. So when you think of that, you think yourself, I think 10 points would keep us up. And Liam might be right on 8. But the main thing is, I think we've got the games to do it. I don't think Burnley are great. I know it's away. Sheffield United haven't got a team. West Ham, I think they're dropping off. And I don't even think Arsenal's unbeatable either. I think they're hitty-missy. It depends what games Liverpool's got the week we're playing them. It's difficult, but the games I fancy least is Leicester and Man City. I don't expect anything. I think Leicester's just got the beat of us every time, and Man City, take Rafa out and then we can't hold them down. But I still think we'll stay up. I think it'll be tight. The one thing I think we keep avoiding is Fulham's had a great run, and we forget they're not world beaters. They didn't get there by default. And I think the reason that Fulham are down there is because they're an awful side as well. It looks like they've got players who's more motivated than we are. So I think we'll stay up. I think Fulham in another. I think another team will drop in. Could be Southampton, it could be Burnley. But I am worried. Of course I'm worried. I can't see the takeover not happening if we stay up. So that's why I'm worried, because I'm only here for the takeover.
Yeah, exactly.
Steve, I was just going to say that people talking about the state of the ground. I'll give you an idea. When we did We Are the Geordies, the film, when the film was done at the back of the Gallagher end, where the statue is for Jackie Milburn, there was a plastic bag stuck in the trees. Right, this was 2016. That plastic bag is still stuck in the tree. Right, the club were told about it in 2016. The plastic bag it must have been nearly a biodegradable one because there's not much of it left, but it's still there wrapped around the tree at the side of the Jackie Milburn statue. And for me, that sums up what's wrong with Newcastle United. And if people at the club cannot even get off their backside to take a plastic bag that's wrapped around a tree that is alongside the statue of one of our greatest ever footballers, then quite frankly, they don't deserve to be working at Newcastle United. And yet for 5 years, they've left it like that. And just that little piece shows the pride that we've got, but the lack of pride that is existent at that football club, or at least that's the perception that it gives me. And I'm sure it's the perception it gives everybody. Think about it. 5 years with a plastic bag stuck in a tree, and all it would take was one person with authority to get to one of the ground staff and say, "Get out there with a set of ladders or a pickup or a high ab or whatever you want to call them, and get up there and just trim that tree, take that rubbish out of the tree that's stuck there, because it makes the football club look poor." But no, it doesn't happen. And what's wrong with the hierarchy of a football club that hasn't even got the foresight to do that?
Yeah,
it's just mental.
No, it is. It is absolutely mental. And it's soul destroying walking around that ground. It really is. You know, and just to see your photographs, as you say, from the other week, it just leaves a sour taste in the mouth that the current custodians couldn't give a monkeys about the state of it. You know, and it's the one thing that they should do. Really look after the ground. But okay, Mitch is obviously getting a pint somewhere. He's back. We're gonna have his little segment now. Here we go. Yep, it's Toon Lookalikey, where Mitch sits all week in the surgery, but in between teeth, and tries to find out who looks like who. He had a bit of help this week.
A bit of help?
Yeah.
My God, I've sent this about 25 times. So I couldn't not use this. This was guaranteed for the Lookalikey this week.
What a classic!
Fantastic!
It is.
It is. There was a guy on Twitter did a series of managers that looked like famous paintings, and that's just crazy.
It is. It looks. It's just uncannily like him. I mean, it could be related. You just don't know. It could be an old ancestor. But absolutely brilliant. Yeah, saw that on Twitter myself, and that is Mitch's Toon Lookalike this week. Fantastic. I love the fact as well in the chat that people always ask us, I'm just going to nip for the toilet, or I'm just going to nip for a drink. Don't do Troll of the Week. It's everyone's favourite tune, that one. Like, everyone loves it. God almighty, it's amazing what Neil from Media Arts has done with that tune. Well done, mate. Okay, I want to ask about Dwight Gale, I suppose. That's my next one, Steve Hasty. I think Mitch is frozen. Can you hear us, Mitch, or not?
I can hear you.
No, you can hear us. Well, Mitch, we'll come to you first. Obviously, the new contract. Obviously, we're coming to that. The business end of the season where we'll have to start looking at it. We obviously spoken on the show before about people being out of contract, so it isn't a surprise. I think the greatest surprise for everybody is Dwight Gale. The 3-year deal. Yep. And I mean, is that in your mind? Is that because we're planning for the championship, or is that us? Nope. Doing a sensible thing and getting him tied down so we can get something financial for him?
Actually, for once, the club doing the sensible thing, protecting an asset. They're covering their bases. My understanding was he was promised a contract, and then the club went silent on it, and he threatened not to play. And so the club decided to do something about it without involving the manager. And no matter what he might or might not try to say, I think he kind of hinted at this actually in the press conference today. He had nothing to do with that contract. Not a thing. Not a single thing. It was nothing that Bruce said or did that initiated that contract. That was the club. And if you look at it on the face of it, what they're doing is they're covering their bases. He's a proven useful striker in the Championship. So if relegation does happen, there's somebody on my books that will can score goals at that level and has done so before forward and got promoted on the back of it. He's also a striker that many Championship teams are interested in repeatedly. So therefore, we're protecting value on an asset. He's not going to wander off for free. He's covered in terms of somebody somewhere will have to pay a fee for him. It might not be a massive fee post-COVID, but it's still a fee. So for once, actually, as a business decision, that's quite sensible. And it's not about accepting that we're going to be in the Championship next season at all. That's not what it's about at all. It's about protecting an asset. And that's the pure baseline on that, plus the fact they've promised him a contract. And as a player, he was getting quite upset that the contract wasn't forthcoming. And so there's probably an agent at play behind that, but he's probably got quite a savvy agent that realises, you know what, you're going to get a good deal here. If you go to a Championship club, you might get half the wages next season because the money's disappearing out of the game, left, right and centre. So it's actually, from a club perspective, quite a smart move, in my opinion.
All right, Steve, to you now, mate, on the same question. I mean, obviously, I've seen the Chronicle article today saying that Paul Dummett could be next. I mean, I wouldn't be adverse to Paul Dummett getting a contract, but, talk of Andy Carroll earlier in the week, maybe he's getting a new deal. I mean, surely not.
Let's take the Dwight Gale one first. From my understanding, the player wants to stay as well. So if the player settled in the Northeast, he wanted to stay. He wanted that new contract from the club, and he's got the new contract from the club. As Mitch says, everything is sensibly been put together because you can see the pluses and the minuses, or you can see the pluses and the pluses if you want to look at it that way. But what's also interesting is that you're talking about a savvy agent, Mitch. Savvy in respect of post-COVID, far better to have your client already settled and locked up on a 3-year contract, and so it knows he's protected for the next 3 years. Because post-COVID, as you say, the chances are that the contracts that would be on offer from a team in the Championship, a Championship league that is absolutely crippled with debt and has at least 8 clubs that look as though they could be going out of business if there's not a rest.
10 is what I've been told.
10. Well, there you go. It was 8 a couple of weeks ago, now up to 10. And so you're looking at it and you think, well, who would want him? Or who could afford him? Or more important, where could he go? So from that, purely from a selfish perspective of a player and an agent, they've done a fantastic deal for him. The lad's now settled for 3 years in the Northeast. If he wants to stay, he's got I'm not saying it's a buyout clause, but he's got a contract that'll have to be paid up if the club want rid of him. I think it's a win-win on everybody's side. And post-COVID, I think it's an absolutely superb move by his agent.
Yeah.
Andy Carroll. Oh, well, Andy's not played a game this season. Andy only comes on for 30 seconds under Steve Bruce. So the question is, you can talk about the contract for Andy Carroll, but is Andy Carroll going to get a contract while Steve Bruce is still the manager? No, because he's not going to get a game. Is Andy Carroll going to get a contract under a new manager if the club stays in the Premier League and there's been a takeover? Probably not, because they'll be looking elsewhere and they'll be looking for much, much bigger fish than the likes of an Andy Carroll. So Andy's in that strange sort of hiatus situation that footballers at 31-year-old find themselves, where the injuries are catching up with them, the lack of game time catches up with them, and the lack of goals catches up with them. Dummett, I think Dummett's been unlucky for the last 18 months, or certainly the last 12 months with injury. I think if you can have the same Paul Dummett as we had maybe 18 months ago, there's no question in my mind that Paul Dummett would be an asset to a back five. He can cover as a left back, and he can also play in a back three. I think he's one of our best defenders. Certainly when he plays alongside in a three. I think with a close season under his belt with training, something that he probably hasn't had for 2 seasons now, I think you can then see him building up his strength and building up his speed again. Not that he was the fastest of players, but he could read the game. So I would be quite happy if Paul Dummett got a new contract.
Yeah, me too. I think it would be great to see Paul Dummett, rewarded really. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Depends again what division we're in. It's that's the big thing hanging over us. Over to you, really, Keith. Just your take on these contracts and what you think it's all about.
I think the Dwight Gale one was a no-brainer. He was bid at 20 million by Fulham, I believe, 2 years ago, and there's every chance Fulham will go down. If they don't, I'm sure Sheffield United and West Brom will. And I think between those two teams and teams like Middlesbrough, I think there's a lot of people who's going to pay 6, 7, 8 million for Dwight Gale. It's not a lot of money to pay for someone who gets 20 plus goals a season in the Championship. So if they didn't tie him down, I think he would end up playing against us. And I think by tying him down, we'd get a fee. The other thing that could happen is Gale could then feel revitalised and think, well, I'm going to work my ass off to the end of the season. So he could get you a couple of goals that keeps you up. So I thought that was a no-brainer deal. And I thought if he'd gone, walked out the door on a free transfer, I think he'd end up playing against us if we went down. If we stay up, which I expect we will, the benefit there is that we could sell him straight away. So that's a no-brainer deal. I heard about the Andy Carroll deal. I didn't necessarily squash it. If somebody offered him 30 grand a week to play, a playing contract, I think Andy Carroll next year in the Championship would get a lot of goals. And I think the amount of fixtures you've got in the Championship, I think you need 4 strikers. I'm a dreamer, and I hope that we can keep hold of Wilson because I think his heart's in the right place, and I think Wilson's the type that could be taught at the end of the year. So if Wilson, say Anderson, Andy Carroll and Gale were there, that would be as good as 4 strikers any team in the Championship would have. So if you're planning for next season in the Championship, I can see what's going on there. Dummett, he's always the first on every manager's team sheet, so I think he deserves a contract. I wouldn't give him a long contract, but I think he definitely deserves one. And I think it all depends on whether we're staying up or going down, because I don't see Almiron hanging around. I don't see St. Maxim hanging around. And I think for them to stay, we'd have to get a new manager. We'd have to get taken over. Because I think they've written the club off, and I think they've written the coach off. So Ryan Fraser doesn't want to be here, so I think he's out the door as well. So,
what do you think's going to happen with Woodman, Mitch? Chris Shields saying he's racking his brain about the Woodman situation. What do you think happens next season with him?
Simple answer for me, if we go down, I think Dubravka and Darlow will be out the door, and he's my number 1. Proven at that level, we make money off 2 goalkeepers. We've got somebody who can go straight into the first team. My personal feeling on Woodman is that if we are in the Premiership next season, he needs at the very least to be our solid number 2, challenging for number 1. And if he's not up to that, we're cashing him. But I think he is up to that. From what I hear from the Swansea lads, is they love him to bits. And that he's won them a number of points this season already. But it's great to be blessed with riches in many ways, It's a great problem to have, but it's one that we need to solve. I'm not convinced we've got a manager who could solve that. I don't think we could solve a Rubik's Cube, so,
What do you think, Steve? Woodman, I mean, is it somebody you'd bring back? I've seen plenty positivity from him, from our fans.
I think he'd stay for another season at Swansea. I think if everything stays the same at St James's Park, in terms of the league, I think we'll still have Darlow as number 2. I think we'll still have Dubravka as number 1, Gillespie as number 3, and I think that Woodman will stay for another season at Swansea. That's my opinion. And then Woodman will eventually come back. He's got a 5-year contract, I think. He'll have 4 years left on it. And he'll come back and he'll be slotting straight in as a number 1 when the likes of Dubravka and Darlow move on. But I don't see it happening if we stay in the Premier League. I don't see it happening this season or next season rather. I would not be surprised if his deal at Swansea was extended for another year.
Yeah. Is it somebody you'd like to see stay at the club? Is it somebody you'd like to see come back, stay at the club and, try and fight for a place? Keith, is that somebody you'd like to have, in and around the club? He's a good goalkeeper, but we seem to have gone through this period over the last few years of just having good goalkeepers at the club, spoiled for choice, if you like.
I mean, think about when we lost Foster, what a crime that was. I mean, he's been a great goalie ever since. But for me, if we go down, I think Dubravka goes, and I think he'll be number 2 to Darlow, and I think he'll eventually get in before Darlow in time. And if we stay up, I think there's every chance that it'll be number 2 to Dubravka. So I think stay up. He's with Dubravka, number 2. Go down, it'll be Darlow's number 2. Because I think if we stay up and buy players, I think Darlow's on his way. I don't think Darlow's going to play second fiddle after the season he's had.
Yeah. I mean, Darlow could be in tomorrow, Mitch, depending on how.
Really?
I mean,
he's injured, Keith.
Well, Dubravka's had an illness, hasn't he? He's had a stomach bug of some description, so no confirmation as to whether he's made a full recovery from that. But yeah, we are spoilt for choice with goalkeepers, and at least it's not a position we're struggling in, Mitch.
No, and we have been lucky over many years to the point where it's been very sometimes difficult to pick the keeper. And we've had this dilemma and this discussion this season about once Dubravka was fit, should he come straight back in? And my opinion is straight away, if that's your number 1, he's your number 1 and he goes straight in. And I think we've fallen between two stools with goalkeepers like that too many times over the last few years. There's times where we've had keepers who you could put a cigarette paper between them in terms of what they would deliver, and sometimes we actually lose out because of that, because we haven't got a consistent keeper, and sometimes that upsets back fours if they're dealing with a different keeper every 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, it's a good problem to have, but it's also an annoying problem to have.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, that in seasons gone by and in years gone by, and I'm going, 10, 15 years, it used to get goalkeepers who would play 38, 40 games a season. Very, very rarely miss a game. It's in the last 3 or 4 years that we've suddenly seen lots of injuries from goalkeepers. Goalkeepers out, and certainly in the Premier League over the last sort of season and a half, we've seen Edison out injured. We've seen the Liverpool goalkeeper out injured. We've seen issues with De Gea. We've seen obviously Dubravka for us. So it seems to be all of a sudden in the modern game we seem to be goalkeepers suddenly getting injured. It's a new thing. It's really strange. I don't know. I'm from obviously you're with a medical background, Mitch, but it's just something that's baffled me over the last couple of seasons.
Is it just an evolution of the position? The sweeper keeper, so to speak, has become, the goalkeeper has to be more than just a shot stopper, more than just somebody who can command a 6 or an 18-yard box. He's become somebody who is effectively, the sweeper. And so they have to be more athletic. They have to do more with their feet. They've got to be 2-footed. And this, Keith, is why we lost Fraser Forster. The decision made between him and Tim Krul, the difference was they felt Krul was better with his feet than Forster was. And so they let Forster go based on that was the difference. That was the point of the difference.
Who proven to be the best goalie now, though, Mitch?
Well, Forster, because he's less injury prone.
But he seems as though he's turned out. He seems as though he's done more, doesn't he?
Yeah, he has.
Celtic and Southampton.
He has. Going up to Celtic was a good move for him. It was a really good move for him. And I mean, Krul's doing really well at Norwich now. But the minute he dislocated his shoulder for the second time, that was a big red flag for me. In terms of getting injured and injury-prone keepers. But the position of goalkeeper is so different now to what it was 10, 15 years ago. Even. And so is that playing the role in why they're getting injured more? I just don't know. Keepers are still overprotected for me. you just have to look at them the wrong way, and sometimes referees are given free kicks. I would love to get John Burridge on the show and talk about the evolution of goalkeeper as a position and what his opinion was, because he'd be pretty forthright about it. There's no doubt about it. I'd love to hear what Budgie would have to say about the evolution of the goalkeeper position, because he was doing stuff 20, 25 years ago that some of these lads aren't even doing now.
Yeah,
and
you can't forget that warm-up session that he used to do, where he was doing every single move possible, wasn't he? Fantastic.
He used to eat baby food because he reckoned he could digest it better on the day of the game.
Yes.
He's got a million and one stories. He was here in Dubai for a while. He's up in Oman now, and obviously does a lot of work with the Oman national team. And he's really brought goalkeeping on in this region massively. And one of my mates, Spugsy, used to play with him in Al Safa here, and he said it was never dull, never boring, and he was always vocal. And I really would love to hear what Budgie's got to say about the evolution of the position, because he seemed, in hindsight, that he was ahead of the curve.
Yeah, amazing stories from John Burridge. You get a few from the ex-players. I think it was Steve Watson who once told us on a talk in that he had a room with him once, and he was diving around and he was getting Steve Watson to chuck oranges across the room so that he could dive and catch them. He says this is at night time when we're all supposed to be getting some rest and some kip, before the game. Absolutely brilliant. Anyway, great stuff. As always, Steve works his way through Twitter. I bet he's had a hell of a week this week, but this is Steve's regular section.
It's been some corkers, hasn't it, Steve?
Been some belters, mate. Yeah, you've my inbox and my WhatsApp was full this week, mate. So thanks again, mate. You've whittled it down to a few anyway. So we'll start with this one, which was a late entry.
Yes, this was Mark. Mark sent us this morning. Bruce, I've been very productive international break. They had two fantastic professionals to my backroom staff who will help us dust ourselves down between the losses. And I think is that Aggie and I don't know who the other woman is. What were they called? They were a couple of characters, weren't they? They used to do the cleaning program.
Yeah, Kim and Aggie.
That's it. So I thought that was great. I thought that's the sort of humour that we want. That's what we want to put a smile on people's faces. We want to see the fun side. We can laugh along with them. We can laugh along and put a little bit of humour to the stuff that he comes out with.
Good stuff. Yeah, you said this was a bit more of a serious one.
Yeah, I mean, this is important for Newcastle fans. I mean, this was the amount of tweets yesterday about the Premier League's best striker that didn't include Alan Shearer is criminal. And it was absolutely criminal. Top of the list, and doesn't even include the 23 scored before the Premier League was founded. And then also Lampard in fifth. And you look at it there, Alan Shearer. Now, of those, there's only Harry Kane and Aguero, and obviously Aguero's out. Aguero's leaving the Premier League this season, more than likely, unless he ends up with Chelsea or Tottenham or somewhere like that. But I think he's destined for probably Spain or somewhere. But there's only Aguero and Harry Kane that are still playing. So you've got Shearer there, you've got Rooney, you've got Thierry Henry, you've got Michael Owen, you've got Lampard. I think there's even Jermaine Defoe there on 162. Andy Cole. And yet people are going, oh no, Alan Shearer's not the best. 260 goals. He's 52 ahead of the nearest person. And I think somebody said that he missed a phenomenal amount of games through injury as well. Where would he have been if he carried on? I think he missed something like 400 days through not just niggling injury, serious injury. Dislocated ankle, knee problem, that type of thing. I mean, he dislocated and broke his ankle at the same time in that collision that he had at Everton. But to come out and say that he's not the best in the Premier League, it's an absolute scandal. It's an insult, Andy, to Alan Shearer. It's an insult to Newcastle United fans, but it's a bigger insult to Alan Shearer, quite frankly.
Look, I still think people have a grudge against him because he followed his heart.
Yes.
Yeah,
If
I
you
would agree.
if a Manchester United, Liverpool, well, not Man City, but because they were nothing then, let's face it. But if you played for Man United, you played for Liverpool, then it would have been a different kettle of fish, wouldn't he? Arsenal as well, because they were the only three teams that were around at the time that he could have gone to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Next one, Steve.
Yeah, this was from Lee Foster breaking. Sources close to the head of the Mongolian FA have confirmed he has no intention of dismissing the manager. He would like to reward his passion and loyalty, while the manager himself thinks no one could do better under the current circumstances. Mongolia 0, Japan 14. That was 14. It's like that's a vote of confidence, isn't it? You know, that's the vote of confidence you want when your team's just been beaten 14-0. I think that you cannot actually see it at the bottom, but I think there was actually 3 goals scored after the 90th minute.
In added on time, yes, there were. There were, mate. And can you imagine what that ref must have been thinking? It's like, do I just blow up or what?
Yeah. Still another 2 minutes, lads.
Yeah. Okay, your winner this week, Steve.
Yeah, this was the winner. No, this is old school. This is old school. And it's just a simple photograph. And if you know, you know. And that's all we need to say. For me, Magpie 24/7. Well done. Tweet of the week.
Brilliant stuff. Well done, Steve.
Steve, mate, we couldn't put the comments that followed on from that one because there was some
smell it. Smell it, I can taste it.
Yes.
Jesus.
Smell-o-vision. If there was such a thing as smell-o-vision, I think it would have ruined everybody's tea by now.
Great stuff. All right, let's do Q-Tech Shop's quiz now. He does this and gives a prize each month. Win something tasty with Hasty, it's called. Yep. And his clues over the last few weeks have been the following. Picture of St James's Park and the words Alwyn, the name Alwyn. Your second clue was a picture of the Tyne Bridge with 188 appearances and 6 goals. Not sure whether the leaf was significant there. And then a nighttime photograph of the River Tyne and the Tyne Bridge, the Millennium Bridge and other things all lit up really nicely there. That was your third clue. Welsh International. So, your fourth and final clue is this. The player the clues have suggested was the first ever Newcastle what? So first answers in the chat, and John from Q-Tech will be watching. The first correct answer, and I'm sure Steve does have the answer. So the player the clues have suggested was the first ever Newcastle what? Okay, so let's see who.
Me. I know.
Mitchell, do you know? You can't enter, I'm afraid.
I do.
You can't enter, mate.
You don't need pantomime tickets.
Yeah. Oh, no, he doesn't.
Oh, yes, I do.
Mitch, I'll have to put you on mute because you've got the background noise. Now, cheers, mate. Is this the right answer, Steve?
It is. I believe it is.
Ollie Burton, the first sub. Mitch is nodding. Well done, Barry Hogan. Yep. You are the winner of four pantomime tickets.
And anyone who's ever met Ollie will know what an absolute gentleman he is. An absolute superstar gentleman. He told us a story, Mitch, didn't he, at the Fairs Club about
brilliant.
And about him taking responsibility for a smell that was pervading around the director's box, which he was convinced came from Delia, but he didn't want the embarrassment, so he claimed it for himself. That's the sort of gentleman he is. An absolute lovely guy. And if anyone ever gets a chance to meet Ollie or chat with him, he honestly was a lovely, smashing gentleman.
Fantastic. Well done to Barry. You are the winner. John from Q-Tech will be in touch. Anthony Clennell saying he was first. I don't know. John, if if it's on the YouTube, it's just what I get shown on my little thing down the side. I'll leave it to John to work out. If Anthony Clennell was first, Barry, I apologise, but I'll leave John to find out. Paul Kinson saying he couldn't hear too much because of the background noise. I've had to put both Keith and Mitch on mute. Sorry, lads, it's just obviously technology tonight. Didn't get off to a great start with me, and there seems to be some gremlins in the system for whatever reason from both of you guys. We're going to start looking ahead to Spurs, and with Steve not being on mute, we'll start with one him. Or John says Barry was first. Sorry, whoever is saying I was first. It was definitely Barry. I thought it was. He came up on my screen first, so that was Barry Hogan who's won the pantomime tickets. Well done, mate. Okay, let's look ahead to Spurs. And obviously Spurs are at St James's Park this coming Sunday. It's at 2:05 kickoff. It's live on Sky Sports. And of course, Spurs are coming up here hoping to record their 4th consecutive victory at St James's Park. Obviously, Steve Bruce has had his press conference. Isaac Hayden and Fabian Sharp both in the treatment room. Obviously, not expecting to see Hayden now for the rest of the season. Speaking today, Steve Bruce said that Alan St-Maximin would return against Spurs, but he wasn't as enthusiastic as Keith pointed out earlier about the chances of Callum Wilson featuring on Sunday. And that is a blow for us. We were hoping that Wilson would play, but at least it means he should be fit for the following week. Martin Dubravka, Kieran Clark, Jeff Hendrick, Emil Kraft, Jamal Lewis, Elliot Anderson, Ryan Fraser have, of course, all been away on international duty. We know that Dubravka has been struggling with a sickness bug, and that, again, is something which, essentially might stop him from playing. It also appears that he returned to England in time to be present at the birth of his child. Talk of him potentially being fit for Sunday now, just the bit that I'm reading now online here. Son is predicted to be available, of course, after recovering from injury. That's always the way. Players are out for weeks on end. They always return against Newcastle and usually score. But Ben Davies, Sergio Regulian and Matt Doherty are all doubtful. VAR, Darren England. Referee is Craig Pawson. Steve, huge game. Every game's a huge game at the moment. It's one of those games which you look at and hope that we're going to get something out of it. In the past, Spurs haven't travelled well, and in the past, Jose Mourinho hasn't travelled well. But that all changed last season. Yeah,
I was just going to say that. You know what? If this game had been last season, we were sitting here going, you know what? It's Mourinho. He doesn't like playing at Newcastle. He struggles. His teams struggle, etc. And you're right. Tottenham. We've had some great results against Tottenham in the past, and they were one of those teams again, like you say, who often have struggled when they've come up to Newcastle. Didn't travel well. I don't know whether it's the extra 80 miles that they have to travel on top of the 200 or what, but they all seem to struggle at St James's Park, and we've really played some good performances against them, but Mourinho got the better of us last season, didn't he? And that broke the duck, that broke the ice. And Mourinho's a strange kettle of fish. He's a wily, strange manager. He has a way of winding up his own players like Bruce doesn't, if you know what I mean. When things start to go bad for him and start to unravel, he has a way of being able to pull it around. I mean, we're talking about a bloke who's won championship after championship, competition after competition, cup after cup, everywhere he's been. Success oozes out of him. Confidence oozes out of him. The confidence that doesn't ooze out of Steve Bruce oozes out of Mourinho in spades, doesn't it? And he can drive a team forward. If Tottenham have a bad run of games, then for a fact, at least I feel that I know for a fact that he will be the man who will turn them round. He doesn't suffer fools gladly. He'll throw his own players under the bus if he has to, but that's the sort of bloke he is. That's the man manager that he is. Son back, as you say. Harry Kane back on the score sheet in midweek for England, although it was a penalty. And that was 10 penalties that he scored for England. Now the record penalty taker for England. Confidence will be high, and we're on the floor. And this is where Steve Bruce earns his corn. This is where Mike Ashley and Justin Barnes, who for all intents and purposes seems to be running Newcastle at the minute, if the press that we're picking up on is true, And Lee Charnley and the coach and staff, this is where they're going to see that Steve Bruce earns his money. And if he can put a performance in that we as a football club need. And I said it before and I'll say it again, everybody galvanised together on Sunday. We desperately need these 3 points, and I expect that those players to go in and be able to perform and get the 3 points that this football club needs, Steve.
Yeah, let's hope so. Over to you, Keith. Your views on this Tottenham game. It's it's another chance to get a point or 3 points. What's your take on this early doors?
I take a point now. And scrap the game. And I would take a battling point, because after Brighton, there's two things you've got to do. You've got to change. You've got to make changes, because if you go in with the same team you did against Brighton, you'll get the same performance. So I would take anything out of that game. I'd even take a 2-1 defeat where Newcastle were played like they could at Everton. They actually attacked, tried the best, did the best. Because if they do that, it gives enough confidence that against the West Hams and the Burnleys and the Sheffield Uniteds, Fulhams, that they can get points out of them. But just look at the team, man. When you can put Bale on the bench, and when you've got the Sons and the Harry Kanes, they're in a different league for us. This is the division between top and bottom. That top six and the monies they can spend. Somebody told us that Gale was on 350,000 a week, basic. It's obscene money. If you look at that hours, so I would take. I mean, I'd love to win, but I'm a realist, and I don't see. If anyone could beat them against this form book, it's Newcastle. Because Newcastle could just turn up and just do something that we didn't expect. But I've got a bad feeling about it. I think the only thing going in our favour is their dressing room. I think Mourinho's having a tough time down there. And I've got a lot of mates who are Spurs fans, and they're saying that all's not rosy and he won't be there next season. So that's how I feel. I just feel that I wish we were playing somebody else. I mean, Kane, they're on fire at the minute. And Dele Alli's back in, and it just goes on and on forever, doesn't it?
Gareth Bale, yes.
I'd say, but he'll be on the bench. But I honestly believe if he'll use a Longstaff and a Murphy and those kind of players, I think we could have a go. But at the minute you see, Hendrick and Shelby, you just think, well, we're going to get battered. And if he picks Hendrick and Shelby tomorrow down Sunday, I think it'll be 3 or 4 against us. And then people might say that's a good thing.
If Hendry and Shelby, then what you're doing is you're immediately setting yourself up
to defend.
To defend, and also to defend basically on the edge of your own box. You put players into the midfield who give you movement. Then at least you're giving the opposition something to think about, aren't you? That's what we're talking about, Keith. When we say that's why we want change, because we want to be able to go out and we want to be able to test the opposition. We don't want to just go out and just make up 11 players. We want to test the opposition. We want to show the opposition that we can move the ball around, that we can challenge, that we can press from the front, that we can be there when they put the ball up, not stand back and admire them and go, "Oh, Gareth, you're a wonderful player. Oh, son, what a fantastic player you are." Hit them. Get stuck into them. Be in their face. I think
you give them the middle third of the pitch up. If you put it in 3 bits, you've got our third, their third, and the middle bit. And when they play Shelby and Hendrick, it just seems that we give that middle third up, like you say, and we just watch them and admire them dinging it about. But when you're all back in your last third, you haven't got a chance. It's going to be a matter of time before somebody's going to break it down.
Yeah. What about you, Mitch? Looking ahead to the Spurs game this weekend, 2:05 Sunday.
But the only glimmer of hope I've got is that's allegedly struggling at left back. And the sad thing is, I think it's going to be Kraft and Hendrick on that right-hand side.
Oh, Christ.
And then we won't exploit that weakness to the maximum. And that's what we should be. We should be looking at how can we exploit their weakness. And apparently they're short of a left back this week. And that's where we should be thinking, right, how can we hit that left back? Just before we started the show, BN was showing their weekly preview for the weekend, and they made a point in the preview for our game. We've conceded 2 goals or more in 8 of our last 12 games, and Spurs have won 4 of their last 5. And that really doesn't augur well. We need, I think, like Keith rightly says, we need to see something different tomorrow. We need to see something different, because what has been used has not worked. 2 wins in 20 tells you everything you need to know about what you're trying to do with these players and whichever system you want to try and squeeze them into this week. We need to see something different in terms of energy. We need to see something different in terms of personnel. We need to see something different in terms of mindset. Are we going to get that? Well, we're up to Bruce's great player randomizer, aren't we? Which side's going to come out? What formation are they going to be in? How many false numbers are going to be in there? It comes back to this through the week. Again, Fraser's a winger, scores 2 goals through the week. It's absolutely ridiculous to see him squeezing players into formations that patently don't play to those players' strengths. And we need to be playing to our individual strengths. And we need energy, and we need a mindset, we need a positive mindset. And we don't need somebody in the middle of the park dropping down between the 2 centre-backs and slowing everything down because he wants to play a Hollywood ball 75 yards cross-field or an on-running full-back. It just isn't working. It's not working. We need something differently. And the point we discussed last week about is he actually trying to make Willock look bad at times? And I've ruminated on that over the last week, and I think that's a fair point. And I hate to say it, but it's bugged us. It's actually bugged us all week. And to the point where I've gone back on YouTube and looked at stuff. And I detest seeing players play hospital balls to their teammates. But go back on YouTube, look at our last 4 games. Willock's had some bloody hospital balls fired at him. 200 miles an hour from 5 yards with a player up his backside. He's never going to be able to control it. I don't know where we're going with the personnel that we have. If he trots out the same trait, we need something different.
Yeah, we do. Okay, well, as always, we have our own resident stato, Andre, who has compiled his latest list of stats, and he says Tottenham is his favourite club.
Hello, Steve. Hello, amigos. Newcastle hosts Tottenham on Sunday. What a game for stats, one of my favorites. Starting with the fact that this was Newcastle's first game in the Premier League back in 1993. We lost 1-0 at home to a Teddy Sheringham goal. Overall, we have a favorable balance, especially at St. James's Park. 12 wins, 5 draws and 8 defeats. By the way, Tottenham Hotspur are our best opponent for number of away wins, 10 so far. And there are so many famous wins for Newcastle in the Premier League against Tottenham. Back in the 93-94 season, Peter Beardsley double at White Hart Lane with this fantastic goal in the last minute. The 7-1 home win in one of the last games of Kevin Keegan in his first spell. 4-1 at White Hart Lane in Kevin Keegan's second spell. Glenn Rioder in charge. We did the double over them. Sam Allardyce beat them at home. So many great games. Also to mention Rafa's last home game in the 2016, just before the relegation, 5-win at home. Here it's notable to say that in both relegation seasons, Newcastle won against Tottenham at St. James's Park. 2-1 in 2008-2009 with Joe Kinnear in charge and Damien Duff scoring a winner in the last minute, and the great game with Rafa in charge that I mentioned before. So overall, positive signs for Sunday. And we also know Jose Mourinho, notorious record against Newcastle. He got his first win only last season. Before that, his record at St. James's Park in the league was 4 defeats, 3 draws, and now he has also 1 win. So I expect a win on Sunday.
Positive vibes from Stato. Positive vibes. Was great as well, wasn't it? I get the pleasure of watching that before all you guys, and I've had that on 3 or 4 times to give us a bit of a lift. David Reed, who is often in the chat, who is very positive all the time, he loved that. But well done, Andre. Fantastic, wasn't it, Steve?
It's got me buzzing now. Got me buzzing. And you know what? Every game that Andre mentioned there, you can remember. For exactly the reasons that Andre said. The Peter Beardsley, the 5-1, the 7-1, the 4-1, the great goal by Obafemi Martins, and so it rattles on and so it rattles on. There have been some fantastic games against them, you know. One of the ones that I always recall, and I know this sounds terrible, but I recall the game, I think it was under Pardew, where Gareth Bale was playing left back and he pulled a hamstring. And I just remember the whole of the crowd after about half an hour when Gareth had to walk all the way around the pitch, and we were going, yes, he's gone, you know, because you knew he was the danger man. And I know it sounds callous, but when one of the best players in the opposition goes off injured, it just gives you hope, doesn't it? That's a game that's just little aside for me. But Andre's got me buzzing now. He's got me buzzing.
Yeah, he's got a lot of people buzzing. Chris Martin in the chat he says Stato is making us feel slightly optimistic. It feels odd. Watland's just to change tact a little bit. He says, just a thought, when things get back to some kind of normality, would you all consider a talking in a boozer? It would be class. Tickets if need be. Well, the good news is we are going to be doing some stuff for the food bank. Hopefully once the restrictions lift off. We've had a couple of online Zoom meetings, which I've had with Steve, with Bill Corcoran, and yes, there's a pub selected in Newcastle, and don't forget we've still got our Christmas party, which as soon as we can get it organised. The problem is Lee Clark's now in Sudan, so we might have to change the guest, but don't worry, that hasn't been forgotten. The NUFC Matters get together will still be happening. I've still got the spreadsheet, still got everyone's tickets. The money was donated by me and Steve to the food bank, of course, but don't worry, we will be having an almighty drink at some point, and yes, there will be some talking at the on behalf of the food bank at
if there's drink involved, Steve, we'll always be able to get Alan Thompson there to cover for Lee, won't we?
If the UK takes Dubai off the red list for quarantine, I'll be back as soon as I can, mate.
Fantastic. Look for him. I'm sure we'll get Keith along as well for a few bevies. I'm sure that will be most welcome. Right, Keith, I'm going to come to you first, mate. I want your starting lineup. People always ask for it. We never seem to get time to do it. I'm going to do Troll of the Week right at the end. So give us your starting lineup, 1 to 11, mate. In old fashioned terms. I don't want you to give us the shirt numbers, but we'll be here all day trying to work all that out.
Dubravka, Manquillo. Left back, Dummett. Centre halves, Lascelles and Fernandez. Going to shock people here. Matty Longstaff, Sean Longstaff, Murphy and Willock. Up front, Almiron and Andy Carroll.
Wow. What a team. Interesting. Okay. I'm going to see Steve writing down. Mitch is going to wing it, I can tell, because he's sitting in the boozer. He's had a few bevies and he's not bothered. So, Mitch, coming to you now, mate. Give us your team.
I'd go Dubravka. I'd go back to a back 5, and I'd have Lascelles, Fernandez, and Clark centre as a back 3. I'd have Murphy and Ritchie as wing backs. I'd have the 2 Longstaffs and Willock in the middle. And depending on who's fit, I'd have Almiron and Joe Linton up front.
Almiron and Joe Linton. Wow.
Yeah, I would.
Interesting. Okay, Steve, you've had time to jot yours down.
I have, because I know what I'm like. I would gone Dubravka and goal, Lascelles and Clark as two central defenders, Dummett and Manquillo as the two fullbacks. Centre midfield, I'd have the two long staffs. Wide, I would have Murphy and Ritchie. And up front, or on his own, probably Wilson with Almiron buzzing around. That's who I would have. That's where I would go.
Wilson might not be fit, mate.
He might not be fit, but you know what? I think he is fit.
Maybe so.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
good. I'm good. I'm playing the old. I'm Steve, so I'm playing the mind games.
Mitch, who did you have in centre midfield?
Two long staffs and Willock.
Right, so you've all gone for the two long staffs in
all
centre
of us have
midfield.
gone. Yeah, everybody.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And
because
obviously Dubravka.
everything I hear from inside the club, from damn
deserve to be
good
in.
sources,
Yeah,
yes, is that pulling up trees in the
they
train,
deserve to be in.
and that Bruce is just doing this, you know, and same with Elliot Anderson. Some of those pros are saying this kid should be in the first team, full stop, and he's playing the experience card, which is bollocks. If you're good enough, you're old enough. And it doesn't seem to frighten any other team. The only team it ever seems to frighten is us.
Yeah. We had this discussion last week, didn't we? Offline, where we talked about Arsenal, we talked about the youngsters that they're throwing in, we talked about the age of some of their players, and then we compared them the age of our players and how many games they'd played in comparison, and it was chalk and cheese. And for some reason, up in the northeast, it's like you can only have one. You can have one youngster, you know, and that's it, and you throw the rest away. And we looked at a squad from about 3 or 4 seasons ago, and we looked at how many are still in from the first team, and I think there was 8 players that could have played from 5 years ago that could have played last week at Brighton. But then you looked at the juniors, and you looked at the under 23s in the academy, and there wasn't a single player.
No.
And we just throw them and we just cast them to one side. We've got a fear of playing youngsters. Either the youngsters aren't good enough, which I don't believe, or we just have a policy that is just there
Steve,
to justify the fact that you've got to have an academy.
we have a head of an academy who's on gardening leave because his wife is suing the academy about how their son was treated. And that tells you everything you need to know about our academy.
Yeah.
It is broken. It's a broken system.
Yeah.
And it's been broken for years. And we've not had anybody who's had the gumption, ability, or inclination to put it right.
Yeah.
And it's a travesty because we are losing generations of footballers.
And
When
this is why-
Chelsea have ties with clubs, junior clubs in Newcastle, and we're missing out on that, that's our club's failing. That's Newcastle United's failing. It's not anybody else's failing but theirs.
Yeah.
And
this
it's
is
not
why
hard
we
to
said-
fix. It's not hard to fix.
Yeah, this is why we said what the football club needs isn't a director of football who just decides who you're going to sign.
No.
The sporting director
director.
takes the club by the scruff of the neck and decides on policy from top to bottom how
Yes.
everything is run and what the club and what the whole function of the club is in terms of playing, what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to do it with short, medium and long-term plans, the style of football you're going to play, the manner in which the club is going to be run, how the academy adapts into under 23s, how under 23 players are adapted and have a program to come into the Premier League or into the Championship or into the first team, whatever you want to call it, and how everybody's working together with a style of football, because that's what it's all about. It's understanding from top to bottom what the football club is about, and once everybody buys into it, then you start to see success. And it's something that's never happened, and it's something that happens and occurs in European clubs, left, right, and centre. And that's why European clubs sell players, that because those players they build them and create an asset, and it becomes a revolving door. It becomes a revolving system where quality always moving through the football club. And you know that when you sell a player, you're selling them just because you've got some more quality coming in behind. and it's a policy and a plan, and it's a structure that you understand, and it's something Newcastle United have never had. And if we just simply shout and bawl and say we need a director of football, then all that is, it's just somebody who basically negotiates transfer,
Yes.
and it's wrong.
No. You need a sporting director. I remember that conversation in the boardroom at BZG with Midhat, watching his face when you put that question to him. You've got this name here. What is he? If you were to go forward, what is he going to do? Is he a director of football or is he sporting director? Cue goldfish face. The mouth going. You know, it was like a revelation. It was like you were showing Neanderthal man fire for the first time, and it was this whole concept that there's something bigger out there that needs to happen. When you take a club like Newcastle with the potential that the club has, with the background that the club has, with what goes on in the region, with what we're nearest rivals 2 divisions below we're in their academy in tatters, and everything that used to make them good, gone. And we've got this opportunity where we should be making hay while the sun shines, and instead we're flapping around the bottom of the Premier League worrying about relegation, and our academy's heads white is suing the academy because of the treatment of their son. You know, it's ridiculous. That's the state we're in at the minute. We shouldn't be anywhere near that.
You know what it was? It was reinforced to me about how important a sporting director is when I went to one of Steve's talk-ins. And it was about 3 years ago, Steve. It was sat with Nikos Dabizas. And Nikos explained to us what a sporting director was. And we had an opinion. You had an opinion. I had an opinion. Other people that I was with in that particular talk-in, we all had an idea. But when Nikos explained it to us in plain, simple terms, and yes, it took him 20 minutes to explain it because he was so absorbed in it. But it was fascinating to listen to. And it's things like that, listening to pros who have then gone through the structure and gone through the system and understand what it's all about. And that for me it was the icing on the cake. It sealed the deal for me when I was hearing from Nikos of what a sporting director. I'd read about it. I thought I understood it, but to actually hear it from someone it was embedded into his mindset, into his mentality, and had worked in that role. That for me sealed it. It sealed the deal, and it showed for me. We then went on. We had a talking with that you did again with Kevin Nolan. Another excellent talking where Kevin talked about his role and what he thought his role would be in a football club, but he was more into the coaching and into the football side and not into that. And he was saying, you know, yes, I understand sporting director, etc. But stepping away, I want to be a coach, I want to be a manager, but I would work under a structure like that. And all of these type of things, these are conversations that should be being had, that owners should understand and should be reacting to. And I'm hoping if we end up with new owners that it's the sort of conversations that have been had and will be had and will act upon.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, you know, it's just hopes for the future, isn't it, Keith? That's what we've all got, really. And hopefully, you know, the next time we invite you on, we'll be all sitting here, 3 sheets to the wind with Liam celebrating the takeover.
Look, that must be a good hint that I'm not getting on for a few weeks.
Oh, that's a clue. That's a clue.
That's like Steve Bruce get these cards. Jesus Christ! You should just said, Keith, you've done shite tonight. We're not getting you back on. I take that much easier. I think our needs are more urgent than that, and I think it's great when you hear about sporting directors, and I think it's great when you hear the ethos that people are talking about. But in reality, we've brought a coach in who made a marked difference against Everton. And in the 3 or 4 games around that period, we looked like a team that could attack. And we looked like a team who had a system. And it looked as though each person knew what they were doing. And it's the only football club on the planet that could get to that period after making that investment. And I was told he didn't come cheap, so there's a compensation package to get him out of Bournemouth. They bring him in, and he argues he's not working as one with the head coach. So what Newcastle need more than a sporting director right now is those two to say, look, we're going to be one. We're going to be best mates for the next 9 games. And then if we do that, get one message out. Rather than 2 messages come from the touchlines, they get one message out to the players. So instead of the players looking dumbfounded, they know exactly what's wanted of them for 90 minutes. And I think that's more urgent and more pressing, because if we go down, there's nothing to say we'll come straight back up, and we might not be able to afford a sporting director. So for me, I think needs must now. I'd rather, what could we do today to change things? Get rid of Bruce. What else could we do? Get Bruce and Carr to work together. But it just isn't happening, you know what I mean? You'll know when they name this team sheet. When they name this, Steve, when they name the team sheet on Sunday, you'll know exactly how we're going to play.
Yeah, I agree entirely with you, Keith. You're absolutely spot on, because football is probably one of the most simplest games going. And when you end up in a situation that you've just described, you're absolutely spot on. When you end up with two coaches on the touchline who are given alternative views or alternative messages, or just given an opinion that's totally at loggerhead, then the game dies, doesn't it? The performance dies. Footballers are designed, the whole mentality in the game is designed to take an instruction and follow an instruction. And if you've got two instructions, then it's just mind-blowing, isn't it? It just blows the head.
It's more basic, isn't it, Steve? It's more basic, though, isn't it? It's going in that dressing room on Sunday and saying, you've got the shirt, you've got it for 90 minutes or less. If you don't perform, go out and work your bollocks off. Yeah. Go in every tackle as well to your last tackle. Go on as though your granny's dying tomorrow and she's in the stands watching you. Go out and give us something for Newcastle, because the team's going down. We're going to get relegated unless you grow a pair. Don't worry about these lot, the coaches off the pitch. Worry about what you do on the pitch. There's just no passion there.
52,000 inside would have been doing. The 52,000 would have turned up on Sunday, would have been expecting that and demanding it, wouldn't they?
But what did they do against Brighton? What did they do against Brighton?
Where, for me, this is where, if the message we've had from Lascelles this week is right, it's time for him to step up and lead that dressing room, because he's the only leader in there.
It's players that need to do it. You're right.
Yeah.
You bang on, Mitch. It's players that need to stand up and go pair balls.
If it's true, he's turned round and said, take the captaincy office, I want to concentrate on me playing. And the other players are rallied around and said, no, you're our captain. Right, Jermaine. Let's see what you've got, mate. Jamal, sorry. Let's see what you've got as a captain, as a leader. You've done it before. Yeah. Let's see you do it again. And that's what we need. We need somebody to step up. And for me, he's the man that can.
The only thing we know is on Sunday night, we'll only have 8 games left. That's what we do in them 90 minutes as players, as coaches, to determine whether we'll go into that 8 games with optimism. And that just means battling and putting a foot in and getting hurt and dying for the club. But I didn't see it at Brighton of anybody, and that's what's needed.
Yeah, Darren Lee Wells says, I wouldn't trust Steve Bruce managing a paper shop. He did do that once, Darren. It blew away.
There's the dad joke for the night.
I'm here all week, literally. And here we go with your favourite guys. I know everybody's sitting at home waiting for it. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. I love it. It is a classic. This week I was this week I've got to be honest, I was struggling to find any criticism online. I had to really delve into this quite deeply, lads. But I did find one, and it's, with us being such a narcissist, I decided that I would pick one which had a fantastic reply from me, and here it is, and picked for 2 reasons, because I've never been called this before. Plus, my reply was quite good, not hairy.
Hairy.
So big shout out to Andy McCaskill. Right. He says, I right up your street, something for now, you effing grifter. So my reply was, well, I'll keep you on here for now due to your appreciation of old bikes.
A rally grifter.
Very
Big shout out-
1980s, that, Steve.
Big shout out to Andy McCaskill. When you're trolling somebody of a certain age, you're always going to a certain age of a reply. You are troll of the week, son. Fantastic. I love that. Honestly, we could do a full show of that after this week's crack, but we're not getting into that tonight. As always, Mitch, Steve, wonderful show. Thanks for your support this week to you, to Steve and to Keith for all your inboxes, your kind words, and everybody in the chat. Been a great week for me personally. I feel like there's a huge weight off my shoulders. I just hope Steve Bruce doesn't put it back on my shoulders by taking the team into the game looking for a draw and getting beat. Let's hope it's 3 points. Let's hope when we're all back properly on Monday, we're celebrating a win. I'm back tomorrow with Mick Lowe's, 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Tune in to hear what Mighty Mick's got to say. And happy birthday to Mick today. It is his 60th birthday. So happy birthday to him.
Happy birthday, mate.
Yeah, Steve, can I just say, I was walking along Jesmond Road this afternoon, and a lad stopped me. I didn't know who he was. I didn't get a chance to catch a name, nothing. But we were walking along. We were walking into town with my wife, and he stopped me, and he went, "What was it?" His exact words were, "Championship, lad. Championship. We're going to the championship." And then he went, "By the way, love the show. It's a great show. Keep it up. I hope you're going to carry on with them." And I was like, my wife was going, "Who's he? Who's he?" I don't know. He watches the show. I apologise because I didn't get a name, but I thought, you know what? This is like what it means an awful lot to people. And it's great. I felt great at the fact that people are watching the show and then they're recognising us walking down Jesmond Road. You know, even with a mask on.
It's mad, isn't it? It's mad. Well, yeah. Keith, keep up the good work. Steve, Mitch, enjoy yourselves. Mitch, enjoy your time in the bar. We're getting closer to having a time in the bar over here. So fingers crossed we'll be able to do a broadcast, Steve, from a pub to wind Mitch up at some point. But happy Easter to everybody in the chat as well, and all Newcastle fans who catch up later on. Happy Easter. Have a great weekend. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, lads. Good night.
Cheers, everyone.
See you.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back.